Ladies and gentlemen, before today's commencement address by Pauline Yu, I'm honoured to offer just a few more words of introduction. As Dean Singel mentioned, Dr. Yu is a staunch supporter of humanities education. His scholarship on classical Chinese poetry examines the broad historical canon of Chinese poetry, both on its own terms and as an important comparative source for Western and European Chinese imagery. Thus, it has contributed in fundamental and essential ways to international understanding. Her books include Ways with Words, writing about reading text from early China, Culture and State in Chinese History, Conventions, Accommodations and Critiques, and Voices of the Song Lyric in China. And she's the author of dozens of articles on classical Chinese poetry, literary theory, comparative poetics, and issues in the humanities. So it is a great privilege and a great honor to welcome to the podium Pauline Yu.
Thank you, President McRobey, and thanks to your colleagues, to the trustees, for offering me the honor and privilege of sharing the conferral of an Indiana University degree with these accomplished graduates who are filling this arena. I feel, and I hope they do, after having come this long way, that they're the ones who've really earned it. I congratulate all of you on the persistence and determination that have brought you here today. You've achieved something that is both difficult and maybe even unfashionable today, the experience of disciplined study and a commitment to reason as the route to knowledge. We live in an age that values abundant information, but too often discounts thought, reflection, and analysis. Politicians and pundits question the value of entire fields of knowledge. Subjects that don't seem to be obviously work-ready, like anthropology, art history, or French, are pushed to the margins or regarded as optional luxury goods. The sciences are no longer prized as the endless frontier of discovery and progress, but considered mere opinions, and possibly subversive ones at that. Well, I congratulate you for having swum against this tide and for having reached the shore where your accomplished learning can be recognized and celebrated. This ceremony is a commencement, but of what? You must each have your own answer to that question. This could mark the beginning of your career beyond the classroom, or one in the classroom on the other side of the desk, or the next stage of advanced study for another degree. Perhaps a short interlude of riotous festivity is in your plans. But today I ask you also to remember the commitment your studies have entailed. Today begins your lifelong responsibility to vindicate the hope that brought you to graduate school. And that is the hope, the expectation, that knowledge liberates. It's what makes you free. The university is one of humanity's most durable institutions, stretching back to the 11th and 12th centuries in Europe, when new communities of learning were established in Bologna, Paris, and other cities that are the direct ancestors of Indiana University. What caused this big bang of learning at that moment in time? Many forces made it possible, but the essential precondition to the origin of the university was the catalytic force of knowledge itself. As the historian Charles Homer Haskins recounts, this period witnessed a great revival of learning, a great influx of new knowledge into Western Europe, chiefly through the Arab scholars of Spain who transmitted the works of Aristotle, Euclid, Ptolemy, and the Greek physicians, the new arithmetic. This last enabled the Middle Ages' own digital transformation, for geometry and math became possible when the use of Arabic digits dispelled the burden of calculating in cumbersome Roman numerals. And it's worth noting that even at this early point, the pursuit of knowledge was an essentially transnational enterprise, as it remains today. Haskin identifies some elements of the first universities that have persisted until our time. First is the formal association of scholars and students in a common life of learning. Second is the notion of a curriculum of study, tested by examination and leading to a degree. Third are faculties defined by their expertise and brought together under deans, chancellors, and rectors, now presidents. All these venerable elements will be inscribed in some form on the diplomas you will shortly receive. And to be sure that we recall their medieval origins, we've donned distinctive regalia symbolizing that earlier time, gowns, caps, and hoods that would have kept us warm in the drafty cloisters of long ago. And we have the Indiana mace. Now, do all of these gestures to history mean that the content of university learning is antique and useless in modernity? How loudly can I say no? The briefest glance over this afternoon's program reveals domains of knowledge unknown and unimagined by our medieval forebears. Science, one of the greatest works of human creativity, is a cornerstone of the modern university, but was absent from the medieval curriculum. The study of the arts is today an essential component of the university's mission, but was left outside of its ancient walls. But how should a university design a curriculum that keeps knowledge dynamic, that channels and doesn't forestall new ideas and methods? We find one answer to that question in a voice from this very campus. Now, when measured from the perspective of the Middle Ages, Indiana University is relatively young. The state was only 4 years old when the legislature created in 1820 what became this great institution. When the university celebrates its bicentennial, much attention will no doubt be given to the legacy of Herman B. Wells, its transformative president and chancellor. Wells had much to say during his remarkable 62-year tenure, but on the subject of curricular innovation, he was quite concise. He advised university leaders to provide for the esoteric, exotic, and impractical in the curriculum. The practical and pedestrian will take care of itself. If it does not, you have not lost much anyway. So I think that impractical things are the most practical in the long run. My friend Robert Dycroft, the director of the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, has recently expanded on this theme. He has reissued, with a companion essay of his own, the article, The Uselessness of Useless Knowledge. The usefulness of useless knowledge. I knew you would catch me on that. Originally published in 1939 by Abraham Flexner, the Institute's first director. Together, Dycroft and Flexner marshal examples of purely theoretical, curiosity-driven discoveries and theories whose utility became manifest only many years later. These include probability theory, which mathematicians hoped would help them gamble better, but in fact laid the basis for mass market insurance. Or Einstein's famous theory of relativity, once pretty theoretical, but now critical to the proper operation of global positioning systems, or GPS. As Flexner wrote, curiosity, which may or may not eventuate in something useful, is probably the outstanding characteristic of modern thinking. Unfettered inquiry is not just about possible inventions, but is essential to an ecology of thought that is essential for spiritual and intellectual freedom. And what is true of science, Flexner asserted, is equally true of the humanities, or music and art and every other expression of untrammeled human spirit. A poem, a symphony, a painting, a mathematical truth, a new scientific fact, he wrote, bring satisfaction to an individual soul and set it free, and they thus bear in themselves all the justification that universities need or require. The pursuit of knowledge is something that one undertakes for the long term and for its own sake, and it yet may pay off in quite unexpected ways. Fortunately for you, my remarks are not for the long term, and I'll conclude with just one bit of advice. You probably won't want to answer the question, what did you study in graduate school at Indiana University, by saying, well, I'm proud to have a degree in useless knowledge. But I do hope that you'll see yourself as part of a community of learning that has honored you with a degree today. That community is IU, to be sure, but it is also a lineage of centuries of institutions dedicated to sustained inquiry and free-ranging curiosity. I hope that you'll continue the dedication to learning that has brought you to this happy day, and that you'll uphold the conviction that deep understanding of the world's complexities is necessary, often hard-won, sometimes confusing, but never optional. Knowledge is always incomplete, but it is constantly on the move. That is why we have universities, and that is why we applaud each new class of graduates as exemplars of and advocates for learning. I wish you much success in that role, wherever it may take you. Congratulations, and thank you again.